Sentinels had an underwhelming and sometimes downright embarrassing performance at VCT Masters Bangkok. And that's not just me being hyperbolic, they would tell you themselves that they did not perform up to the standard that they hold themselves to. So it begs the question, heading into stage 1, is this team still going to be a top 2 team in their region, or is this just a one-off bad performance and there are good things to come with Sentinels? We're here to talk about it. So this is the board we have today. We have the stats of all the players at Bangkok, we have some map stats as well, and we have the 2 matches that they played at Bangkok. Starting with the match against DRX, this was a pretty embarrassing 2-0 loss, getting absolutely manhandled by the Korean team on their own map pick of Lotus, and then having a close haven but still not able to close that one out. As I said, Sentinels picked Lotus, but they lost that one 13-3, and you could just tell that something was kind of off with this team. They weren't making super confident plays, they were getting lost in the mid-round, and just not playing up to the same standard that their coach Kaplan would like them to play. Nobody on Sentinels on that first map of Lotus had over 9 kills. Zekken was the top fragger for that one, so he was struggling, and the rest of his team was struggling even more when it comes to getting those kills. And getting those kills is a problem that this team had at this tournament. There were a lot of problems with this team's overall play, but a big part of Valorant, when you take away all the util and all the strategy, all that, most of what it comes down to is, can you win those gunfights? And unfortunately for Sentinels, they weren't winning a lot of them, including the players that are supposed to be the ones doing that. So Lotus was a crapshoot, they lose their own map pick, they almost get the win on Haven. They did get 2-10 rounds, but during that whole game, the biggest lead that they had was 5-3. They have a close first half, then DRX just started off that second half really well to shut Sentinels down. So that ended their very first match of the tournament with one map that was very disappointing and another that was a bit close. So even if you perform a little bit better on that Lotus map, again, the map that you picked, they banned Fracture for this match, and Haven is a map that they've been banning as well, so they were at a disadvantage for that one, but Lotus should have been where they had that advantage, and it just did not show up. But again, it's the first match of the tournament, you can bounce back from that, and hey, losing sometimes is very important for teams. However, for their second and final match of the tournament, things did not get much better. Losing 2-1 against Team Liquid, the second seed of the EMEA region, a team that honestly did look pretty formidable during this tournament. They'd won close map against Edward Gaming, they did get kind of stomped on that second map though. So in terms of this matchup, it looks pretty even, at least if you look back to the previous game that both of these teams played. But Sentinels were able to start strong, something that they have struggled with at times this year. When you look back to kickoff, it was very interesting because the first map for them was really bad for the first 3 games, and then when they get knocked down to lower bracket, they ended up having a really good start to both games and maps overall. And at this tournament, they started pretty slow against DRX, but then you start pretty strong against Team Liquid. 13-7 was the final score for that one. You had a 7-5 lead at the half. Team Liquid would take the second pistol, so they did tie it up, but then they won 6 rounds in a row to end that map there. So now you're in a pretty good position. You have a 1 map lead and you're heading into Abyss. A map that heading into this map, you're 2-1 on, so you're not dominant on it, but hey, maybe you can pull out a win here. And they end up making it close, but they couldn't get it done. They had multiple chances to put this one away, but just some bad mistakes, and as Kaplan put it, a lot of throws, and just everything from bad plays to indecisiveness to accidentally falling off the map. Team Liquid were able to see blood in the water and pounce at it and tie the game up. Team Liquid won both pistols. They were up 7-5 at the half, but then Sentinels respond with 7 rounds on their defense side. But if their first half wasn't as sloppy as it was, maybe that second half being as good as it was wouldn't have been necessary. If they just cleaned up their attack a little bit on that map and not allowed Nats to just walk all over them, as well as Kiko, who dropped 29 on them on this map, maybe you wouldn't have had to rely on Nere to have a 33 kill map to be able to even get a chance to win this one. So they lose that overtime map in round 30, and that is where the momentum switched in favor of Team Liquid, because Bind ended up being 13-1, one of the most embarrassing maps that I've seen in the VCT. Just bad play after bad play, Nats dominating Sentinels, and Sentinels kind of making it easy for him. Of course, we have that play where Nats is hiding on A, he gets hit by Skyflash, so they know he's there, but then he still is able to pop out and kill the rest of the Sentinel players before they can even get the spike down. Just small decisions like that would have turned the tide of this entire game. If you were just watching Zelsis as he was planning, then you could have got the kill on Nats and probably won that round. Not backing each other up, not trusting each other with the play, and clearly not giving the information that you needed to be able to win rounds like that. Just a map that every Sentinels fan is going to want to forget for a long time. Moving on, I want to talk about two maps that I have on the board here. Split and Lotus, two maps that were in their map pool in 2024, and when both of them were in it, they were very dangerous on both of them. It's one of the main reasons why they won Madrid. They were elite on both Split and Lotus, so if teams banned one map against them, then they just had the other one in their pocket. However, in 2025, it's been a bit of a different story in this maps. Now, these stats include even kickoff as well, whereas the rest of the stats on the board are just Bangkok. But on Split, so far on the year, they have a 3-1 record on it. Attack win percentage has been 56%, defense has been 57%, so they're still really solid on Split, only losing that one time against 100 Thieves, where 100 Thieves threw in the Sage and it threw off their preparation. So Split is still a solid pick for them. However, at least at Bangkok, they seem to favor Lotus as their pick more, which they ended up having a 1-1 record on at Bangkok, but overall they have a 2-2 record, so they've lost as much as they won on that one. On attack, they've been pretty spotty, under 50% win rate here, 47, while defense has been a bit better, but not elite, 52% there. So with these two maps in the pool, again, two maps that they were elite on in 2024, you would think that it would benefit Sentinels. However, I don't know if they've used their picks and their bans super effectively. At Bangkok, they banned Fracture both times. They've been banning Haven in the past, so it seems like those two maps are kind of their permabans. And to me, I think the best teams just overall shouldn't have permabans. I know that that's maybe a bit pie in the sky thing to say, but I think teams that want to be able to win international trophies should have a good game plan for nearly every map. And they seem to have a decent enough game plan on both Split and Lotus, but again, it's been a bit inconsistent on Lotus. So we'll see how their map pool evolves. We of course have Bind and Abyss going out, two maps that have been spotty for them. And we have Ascent and Icebox coming in. Controversial pick for that last one, but hey, it's coming back, so we'll see how Sentinels evolve their map pool around it. Looking at their attack and defense stats at Bangkok, there definitely is some cause for concern here. On attack, in 51 rounds, they had a win percentage of 35%. They won 18, they lost 33. On defense is a little bit better, but not by much. In 52 rounds, they have a 44% win percentage, 23 wins, 29 losses. And yes, these numbers might look a lot worse than they are because of that map on Bind, specifically on attack, because that's where they lost 11 rounds. However, they got blown out on two maps, and that is something that as a top team you just cannot allow. Obviously, you're going to lose maps during tournaments. You're going to lose games even, and losing, especially at this tournament, it's the first one of the year, it's not the end of the world. However, you want to see things trending in the right direction for teams at these international tournaments. I think teams like DRX, even though they had a bit of a disappointing game against T1 at the end there, they still showed some promise. I'm excited for their future. Team Liquid as well. They look like a team that can actually show up at these tournaments and maybe qualify for the rest of them. Whereas Sentinels, all I can really take from this one is they have a lot to work on, and they even said themselves, especially Zelsis in his post-loss interview, that yeah, the team just does not trust each other right now. They don't back each other up when they need to. They make the wrong play a lot of the times. They play as individuals rather as a team. And I think what a lot of this kind of boils down to is they're missing tens. Saucy as well, his veteran presence cannot be understated, and he was very clutch for this team. So losing those two players, especially tens, I think is the bigger one there because he was one of the main playmakers for this team. I got a lot of comments in the offseason when I was critical of this new roster saying that, oh, this team is actually going to be better than last year's roster because, yeah, you're losing Tens and Saucy, but you're getting Bang, who's more of a traditional smokes player. So he actually might be better than the team than Tens will, and Narrate is definitely an upgrade in terms of firepower on Saucy, and he's an initiator player. And while I understand that argument, and that could end up being the truth for the rest of the year, but losing Tens cannot be understated how big that is. He was such an important part of this team, and he was one of the main reasons why a lot of these players had career years in 2024. Zekken specifically, I'll get to the individual players in just a second, but I think Zekken is definitely missing tens right now. And these stats that they ended up with at Bangkok for a team that has this much firepower on it is really concerning. Starting with Nere, who does top the team in rating. He had a rating of 1.05. He had 75 kills, 77 77 deaths, 40 assists for a KD ratio of 0.97. Important to note, as you can see, no one on the team had a KD ratio above 1. Everyone died more than they got kills, as well as Narrate being the only one with a rating above 1. These were some pretty rough stats for some pretty talented players. Narrate was mainly playing Initiator, but played a little bit of smokes here and there. He played Breach, Omen, Fade, as well as Sky. When it comes to Narrate, he has a lot of potential. You can see it in his play. On that Abyss map against Liquid, already mentioned, he had 33 kills in that one, very impressive. But there are some times where he's making those plays that you're like, what are you doing? What's going on here? Narrate is a guy that plays with a lot of emotion, and you can see that emotion affecting him a lot, I think. His brain is clearly going really fast, and sometimes he's using that to his advantage, and this is only the second international tournament he's been to, so he is getting more experience at the international stage, but I really think if he's going to reach that full potential, because so far this year he's been inconsistent, I think he maybe just needs to calm down a little bit, get his emotions a bit more in check, and then he can probably be one of the most dangerous players in the VCT. Moving on to Bang, who hasn't been the most noticeable presence on this team, but he's been at least good for them. I definitely don't think he's been one of the main problems with this team. His rating is 0.93 at Bangkok, 67 kills, 74 deaths, 34 assists, and a KD ratio of 0.91. Bang has been fine. He's a smokes player. You know what he's going to do. You know what he's useful for. And I do feel kind of bad for him that he is technically the TenZ replacement, because TenZ is just a lot better of a player than he is. No shade to Bang, but you cannot tell me that Bang is helping out Zekin in the same way that TenZ was. TenZ and Zekin last year were this dynamic combo where you had this duelist player who was really good at being very aggressive, and then he had TenZ, the ex-duelist player turned smokes player. He learned to calm his game down a bit and just back up Zekin, and it worked to a T, especially on their way to winning Madrid. And now in a post-TenZ Sentinels roster, Zekin doesn't seem to have that right now. I think the idea was Narrate was going to be that guy, but I don't know if he's been that quite yet. And Zekin's stats do kind of reflect this. His rating is 0.92. He had 72 kills, 73 deaths, 11 assists, and his KD ratio was 0.99, just below 1. He had one more death than he had kill. Zekin is a fantastic player. When he's playing at his best, he can be one of the best players in the world. And I got flack in the comment section after kickoff when I said that I felt like Zekin was kind of struggling. Not that he was their worst player, not that he was playing badly, even at this tournament, I don't think he was. But as I said earlier, I think he's missing TenZ. I feel like there's a lot more pressure on Zekin this year. There's a lot more weight on his shoulders to be that main guy, especially when you have some of your other players playing kind of inconsistent, like Narrate, who was supposed to be that talent replacement that TenZ and Saucy leaving is a void that needs to be filled. And Narrate's been great at times, but he doesn't seem to have that same chemistry with Zekin quite yet. Maybe he will in the future. This team still has a long way to go in terms of working on their internal issues and communication, but it's definitely something to look at with Zekin, that without TenZ, can he do it all? Can he really rise to this occasion without the guy that really helped him be the best player that he could be last season? We will see. One other thing that I definitely want to see more from him is try some different duelist agents. Why not play a duelist like Yoru? He's an agent whose pick rate has steadily been going up over the past year or two. We have Waylay out now. We'll see how good or bad she ends up being. But I think the duelist role is in a really good position where you have a lot of very good duelist characters. And maybe they should lean into some double duelist comps. It doesn't seem like Kaplan loves it. He said it was a joke when they were playing against MIBR. That was in the vlog. But hey, you have Narrate, a player that has played duelist in the past to some pretty good success. You have Zekin, who's been your duelist player for a while. Why not try it out? That might end up fixing some of the role issues and composition issues that definitely plague this team. Moving on to John QT, it definitely seemed like at Bangkok he fell off a bit from, I think, the unsustainable level that he was playing at kickoff. A lot of the early wins at kickoff came from John QT just going nuts and keeping his team in it. But at Bangkok, that was not the case. He was second lowest in rating on his team with a 0.82. He had 61 kills, 77 deaths, 26 assists, and a KD ratio of 0.79. He only played 2 agents at this tournament, and that was Taeho and Viper. Not surprised by the Taeho. He's been playing Taeho all kickoff. And for John QT, I think the main challenge right now is going to be getting your team communicating properly. They had a system last year where him as the IGL, while also being a very good fragger, it worked out very well for them, and the team had this really good, amazing chemistry. Right now, the team does not have that same chemistry, so you either have to help Kaplan build that as much as you can. As the de facto leader as the IGL, That is very important for him, and hopefully he can continue to have performances like he had at kickoff, where he was able to drag his team to some of those wins. I'm definitely expecting a bounce back from Jungkook and most of these players as well. I don't expect this team to be bad, that's not the point of this video, but for Sentinel fans, you're hoping for Jungkook to look more like the kickoff one than we saw at Bangkok. Moving on to our last player we have to talk about, we have Zelsis, whose stats were quite bad. There isn't really a lot to sugarcoat with this one. He knows he played bad, he's talked about it, and his stats, yeah, they don't tell a great story here. He has the lowest rating on the team with a 0.77, pretty abysmal stat right there. 51 kills, which is 10 lower than the second lowest on the team in Jungkook with 61. 81 deaths, which is highest on the team. 40 assists, which is tied for highest on the team, so good for that. But he had a KD ratio of 0.63. He played 3 agents during this tournament. He played Vise, which he's been pretty solid on. Maybe not at Bangkok, but during kickoff showed a lot of problems, especially on Lotus. Brimstone and KO, 2 agents that he is familiar with. Zelsis is definitely a curious case. I think he still has a lot to give at the international level. Those last 2 matches of kickoff, he went insane. He was looking incredible, but those performances aren't the consistent Zelsis that we're getting this year. Before those last 2 matches at kickoff, he wasn't performing very well individually either, and as we see here at Bangkok, he was struggling too. Zelsis bouncing back is one of those things where I think it's going to happen, but if it doesn't, I'm not entirely surprised. As I said, I think he still has a lot to give, and he's a big part of this team's culture, of their personality. He is the resident vibes guy on this team, and at least judging from the vlogs, he's very good at calling out this team when they need to be called out. And the value of those things is very important. However, is that more important than individual performance? And at the end of the day, probably not. So Zelsis is going to have to get his numbers back up. And now there's the added pressure of Sentinels now has an academy team that is performing really well in Tier 2. Qbert Academy is one of the best Tier 2 teams in North America right now. So if you're going to make a roster change, you already have a built-in system to swap a player out. Yes, Redux is technically their 6th man, but I don't know if swapping Zelsis for Redux makes a ton of sense because Redux is a duelist player. And you already have Zekken, who's your main duelist player, and Narrate, who would potentially be your secondary duelist player. So if you do make that swap, if you're going to make it successful, you might have to like put Zekken on, say, Initiator or something, or maybe do a double duelist with Zekken and Redux as that, keep Narrate on Initiator, something along those lines. But even beyond Redux, there are a lot of good players at that Qbert Academy team that could end up being the swap. And honestly, I think that's good for these players. I think they need to have that internal competition to be able to bring themselves to that higher standard. They seem to be really honest with each other. I've watched the vlogs and they seem to point out all the problems that they have, and that is great to see. However, that honesty needs to translate into actual wins and actual changes, positive changes in the server. Overall, I do think Sentinels are still going to be a really good team. The roster is too good to not be, I'd say, at least top 3 in the Americas, at least right now, but that region is slowly going to get better. Teams like MIBR are looking pretty good, so can you hold on to those international slots? Can you not have a mid-season slump like you did last year? After Bangkok, when it comes to Sentinels, we have a lot more questions than we have answers. So let me know in the comment section down below, where do you think this team is going to go for the rest of the year? Do you think they continue to be a top 2 team in the region? Do they end up falling off? Is this just a temporary lapse? Let me know what all of you guys think. Please click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.